Okay, what I'm going to be covering in this recording is all the clicking, what it looks like within Redtail uh, to do this workflow thing. So what it just looks like within the software, and we have other recordings where covering the concept in general and other aspects of the workflow process. But here we're going to go from start to finish. We have to use our imagination a little bit to make complete sense of this. So bear with me here. What we want to do today is let's imagine that we've got a client that wants to take a withdrawal from one of their accounts. So we call that the trigger event. So the trigger event, in our practice at least, and in most practices, is going to come when a client calls. There's an interaction with the client. They call and talk to an administrative person, or in a review meeting, or some type of meeting with the advisor. They express that they need to take. In this example, we'll say they need to take a $20,000 withdrawal to take a vacation. They're going to France, and they need to take a $20,000 withdrawal. So I'm going to start here in the Modern Advisor portal. Now, all this is a bunch of online fillable form links that are sitting behind these pretty little icons. So this is something that we can easily show anybody how to build. You can utilize our system if you'd like, obviously, but so let's pretend that occurred. Let's say that it was in a meeting with advisor. So advisor takes note in meeting that client needs to take a $20,000 withdrawal. So I would go in to my portal here, and I would click on ACH or check request. When I click on this, you're going to see an online fillable form populates. And the purpose of this, to get the workflow started, is to just get all the data organized for our team. And again, if you're watching this and you're a sole practitioner, you have no staff, none of this makes any sense whatsoever. The problems that arise when you have a larger firm and you have somebody that does trading activity, somebody else that's talking to clients frequently when they call in, an administrative assistant, a paraplanner, whatever the name may be, when there's multiple parties involved in opening accounts, building the portfolio, billing accounts, all of those things that go on in a practice. As the practice gets larger, there's more and more specialization within the practice, and you've got multiple people involved in a given process. So this organization becomes more and more important the larger a firm gets. So if you're by yourself, this is just going to seem like a ridiculous thing to do that's time consuming and does not help you in any way, shape, or form. So this is when there's one brain involved in doing all the work for a smaller organization. You just do what you're doing. You can kind of organize everything in your own little way. But when things get larger and you have to organize all this information across the entire organization, that's what this is designed for. Okay, so we're going to fill out the information in this online fillable form. We're going to I've got a sample client built in Redtail CRM, and we do a lot of illustrations like this, or whatever you want to call this. So we're going to say the name of the household is sample client. Account number, if known, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So in this case, there are times when maybe the advisor delegates this to somebody else. They've got a paraplanner that's going to look at all the accounts and determine which is the best account for the client to take a withdrawal from a tax planning standpoint, from a surrender schedule standpoint, whatever the case may be. This is a very important part of the process in our firm, maybe not in yours, but for most it will be. But in this case, let's pretend that the advisor met with the client. Client said they needed 20 grand to take a trip to France, and the advisor already knows which account they want the client to take a withdrawal from all tax planning, so on and so forth, perspectives. So advisor knows they want account number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to be the account that the $20,000 withdrawal comes from. Method of delivery. Client told the advisor, yeah, just send me a check in the mail. I don't want to give you a voided check today, or whatever the case may be, if they haven't taken withdrawals before. If they've taken withdrawals before, standard method on file for the client. Most of our clients get an ACH into their checking account. But whatever the case may be, the advisor knows, typically. So And if you don't, you just type in, I don't know, staff member, please, call the client, whatever. You can communicate anything you need to with your team in these, with the way these systems are built. But let's pretend the client said they just want to get a check in the mail. Choose that. They need $20,000 net. There we go. Provide federal and state tax withholding info if applicable. So let's pretend we're taking from an IRA account. They've never taken a withdrawal from a pre-tax account before, and the advisor knows they want to do 15% Fed and 4% state of Ohio withholding. Additional details in A. Enter. Okay, so this form gets submitted. So then what happens is the advisor, in this example, staff member, whomever gets the trigger event from the client to do a thing, to do a repeatable process, fills out that form real quickly. It takes, as you can see, a full 20 to 30 seconds. There are some processes like onboarding a new client where the form is a little bit more detailed. It's still very quick and easy. We've built it that way purposefully to organize the needed information to do any of these repeated processes. We want it to be fast, we want it to be easy, we want it to be thorough, we want it to cover all of the intricacies that could possibly come up all up front so that everybody on the team can do their work. Okay, so what just happened was once I hit submit, I have an email now, and so does my entire team. So my entire team just received the same email notification at Typeform, and here's all the data. You'll notice this in this email is the exact data that I just plugged into that form. So what I'm going to do as the let's now pretend this is administrative person that's going to be copying, pasting this, and starting the workflow in Redtail. So the advisor may have submitted this form. Somebody that picked up the phone may have submitted this form, but either way, there's a person in the office or a team of people that get notified when these forms are submitted, and that's a cue. Anytime one of these is sent out or comes via email, that means, hey, it's time to assign a workflow process, like now. Not this is not an email that sits in the inbox all day, waiting for the next day. When these emails come in, the team is trained. Okay, there's a form notification. That means it's time to start a workflow process in our CRM. So I'm going to copy the data that's here. I'm going to pop over to Redtail, and I'm going to pull up client sample or sample client, who is again the contact record the client that we're pretending that needs 20 grand to go to France. I'm going to click on the plus sign. I'm going to click workflows. And you'll notice that there's a matching of all this stuff. There's a code. There's it's kind of like computer programming code embedded in all of this. So you'll notice that form number 1001. Go back to our email here. Form number 1001 is embedded in the name of the form. It's all over the place. Actually, for this test, I need to. I could have made this a little bit better. This is a test form that I used. But normally, what would be seen right here is form number 1001. Okay, that's what you would typically see. So the form number 1001 corresponds to workflow number 1001. Very, very simple process. When we submit the form that has all the data to do this particular workflow, which is ACH check request one time. I'm going to use this sample workflow here because I need to be able to show you as much of this as possible. You'll notice that since I'm already in the sample client's contact record, that they automatically populate as the contact record that this workflow is going to be assigned to. And pick a target date here. At our firm, this does not really matter. It might matter if this is a detail, but now here's where this data that just got submitted in the online fillable form comes into play. I'm going to paste it. So here's all the information that the team is going to need. So the name of the household, the account number that we're going to pull the amount out, how they're going to. So in our firm, for example, Joe Horvath needs this information. He's going to have the step in the process to push out a check to the client. He needs this. So that's Joe Horvath at our firm. Account number, Joe Horvath needs that, but also the trader needs that. So the trader needs the account number data and the name of the client to match it up, make sure it's correct. The net dollar amount is needed by the trader and by Joe. So our trader, his name is Ethan Dunbar. Ethan Dunbar needs to know the net dollar amount. Joe Horvath needs to know that net dollar amount as well. And then the tax information right here is is the final piece of information, so that the trader knows exactly how much of the account to sell or how much cash to free up, knowing that 20 grand is the net amount. That tax data right there provides the rest of the needed info to sell the proper amount of securities and free up the gross amount, so the taxes can be withheld and the net amount can be received by the client. Okay, so now we are going to create a new workflow. Now again, not to, just to kind of, I'm going to bring this back around to try to get the brain to wrap around this properly as I'm moving along. Remember that there's multiple people in a firm that could be submitting these forms. Everybody has access in their favorites, in their bookmarks, wherever, to this type of a little interface where all of these online fillable forms are available to organize the needed data. That's what we're doing up front. This is I would say, I don't know if it's most important, but it is equally as important as the workflow itself being assigned. Having all the data organized up front for all the team members to be able to do what they need to do. So we've got a trigger event, which is client interaction in a meeting, a phone call to the office, whatever the case may be. It could be the administrative assistant that submits this form. It could be the advisor at the end of a meeting. In my opinion, it works best when everybody knows how to do this that would possibly do it. Okay. Then when the form gets submitted and this email goes out to the team, at this point, it's best to have one person, two people, a particular department, depending on the size of the firm, that they know as soon as they see, they're the only people that get these. So you'll see here, this was sent to partner services. That's, long story short, that's a particular group of people within our firm that get these form submissions. So as soon as these come out, this is going to the right person, okay, or to the right group of people. As soon as they get it, the only thing that it could possibly mean is that they need to assign a workflow. And then they've got all the data right here to copy and paste it into the workflow and to go over to Redtail and to start it out, which is what you just saw. So you just saw me assign this workflow, this sample ACH check request workflow, to sample client. And what you'll see now is I would encourage everyone to work on a daily basis with multiple Redtail windows open at any given time. Okay, so here's my workflow task screen. The way you get here, if you're kind of going here indirectly, your home page, and you just click on active workflow task. Now you'll notice that I've got this step here for sample client and sample workflow. This is sitting in my workflow task screen. Now, side note, but what I do and what my team does is we have bookmarks for these. We log into Redtail one time for the day, and then we have these bookmarks built out where we can go directly to, let's say our templates or workflow task screen. And so I've got this screen open all day, every day, and all I have to do is refresh the screen multiple times during the day as I'm seeing new work come my direction. And then here you go. Here's all of the stuff that I need to get done. So pretend now that this is, I've got this set up for myself to be the receiver of all of these parts of the process to get the client 20 grand. Normally there's, again, multiple people in the firm that would be involved in this, but for illustrative purposes, I'm having everything flow to me. You just have to use your imagination a little bit and pretend the way your firm is set up. So this in our firm would actually go to Joe Horvath. He's my paraplanner. I'm training him to learn how to do things like determine which accounts a client should withdraw funds from a tax planning standpoint and all other aspects. So normally Joe Horvath would get this step. It would be sitting in his workflow task screen just like you see here. He would go, I got some work to do. I got a client, somebody's wanting some money. Let's pretend again that the advisor submitted this form and some other team member assigned the workflow within Redtail, and now team member looks at their screen and sees they've got some work to do. So this step says determine which account the client should withdraw the funds from, so on and so forth. Up above is the information that they need in order to determine this, which is really what's the amount that they need to take. So in our case, Joe would basically open up eMoney, and we have everything mapped out in eMoney for each client. For example, what their current tax bracket is any specific things going on in the given tax year that would cause any problems, or anything that's, let's say, different than normal. That's where he would also know if there's any surrender charge issues regarding particular accounts in the client household, and he would look at all the data in eMoney. He might possibly need to flow over to where our data is stored to look at a tax return for the client or something of that nature, but typically not. And a lot of times we have, for clients that take withdrawals on a frequent basis, that we already know which account. It's already established, and that's easily handled in this entire process as well. But so Joe would look at this. He would look at the needed data for sample client to take 20 grand net, and he would click this complete button over here. I'm not going to cover this multiple outcome thing in this recording. It's too much detail. We've got other recordings on detailed items such as that nature, but outcomes within the workflow processes are slightly advanced for this recording. So for right now, I'm gonna skip that concept, but just know that you have to choose. A lot of times, you only have one outcome option to choose from here. In this particular workflow, there's two potential outcomes. Again, that's covered in a more advanced recording. I'm gonna choose outcome 1 as an option here, and I'm just gonna type a quick note. Okay, complete step. Okay, so now this is where this stuff is going to seem weird. Okay, as you're watching me do this, you're supposed to be a little confused. If you weren't a little bit confused, then it would be a miracle. Okay, you're supposed to be a little bit confused because you're just listening to some weird guy named Landon try to teach this concept and take you through a kind of real life scenario here. You have to do this a little bit yourself. You have to play with this yourself. You have to use the system in let's say a trial format, or whatever you want to call it, a testing format with your team, sitting in a team meeting and having the templates in your system, and you pick one workflow to start. You pick one workflow and assign the proper team members to the workflow steps, and get everything mapped out, and create a sample client in Redtail. I think there's already a sample built in, and you have to play with it a little bit and see how it works. So this is giving you an introduction to it. You're not supposed to get done with this recording and say to yourself, wow, I understand this completely. I understand exactly what's going on here. Unfortunately, that's just not really possible. So I'm going to take you through and try to teach these concepts and show you what's happening here, and make sense of it as much as humanly possible. But you need to take this further, spend more time, and the light bulb will go off. It doesn't take that much time to make sense of all of this. Okay, so back to where we were. If you remember, I just completed step 1 of this client needs money workflow. Okay? Now I'm going to pop back over to my workflow task screen, and you're going to notice now there's another workflow step sitting in my workflow task screen for sample client, and it's for this same workflow, sample ACH check request workflow, but now it's on step 2. Okay, so what this would normally look like is it's a different team member. So this step, when clicked on, you'll see the nature of it. If there are insufficient funds to cover the amount of the check, basically sell some positions for the client so they can get their money. Okay, this would be going to Ethan Dunbar. So in real life, instead of this sitting in my workflow task screen, as soon as person 1 completed step 1, which was determine which account is going to be used, or the money's going to come from, which, you'll start to see this is built with flexibility on purpose. For this to actually work, we have to combine the use of the technology with smart people that are using it. So if you remember, I actually chose an account number on this one when I filled out the online fillable form. It was account number 1234567 Now, when we already have the account number established when the form is submitted, then the person that gets step 1 would just say NA already have account number established. And then it flows on directly into this screen and into the calendar and an email notification for the next person in line to do their step, which in this case is the trader. So the trader now looks up, Ethan Dunbar at our firm would see this in his workflow task screen. He would click on it, and he would see the information right at the top, sample client, account number, okay. The trader doesn't care about how the client's getting the money. The trader cares about who the client is and the account number so they can match up and just make sure that this account number actually belongs to this client. And he cares about the net dollar amount, the net, and the tax information. That's all the trader needs. Trader needs, doesn't need this middle part, all right? But the trader's going to look at all this and do a quick calculation. 20,000 net, okay, we got 19% total between Fed and state that needs to be withheld before we get to this net amount. So they would pop over to the trading system and do the trades. So in the actual workflow, not this sample, there's a link just to make it simple in case the trader doesn't already have the trading software open, but there's a direct link to the trading software right here just to make things easier. But in this case, Ethan would go into the trading system, sell the gross amount needed to get a net check of 20 grand. Would click complete, select the next outcome, and they typically just type completed. If there's any notes that if something needed to be communicated to someone else, like if Ethan needed to mention something to Joe, hey Joe, don't be alarmed by the amount of cash available. We are getting ready to bill, whatever. If something needs to be communicated, it gets communicated right here, and all that data is available as the team is moving along to this workflow process. So Ethan does the trades, clicks complete, his part's done. Now then, I'm going to flow back over my workflow task screen. And now you'll notice, and again, this would be a different person, but for illustrative purposes, I'm having all of these. I've built this sample workflow so that I am the owner of all these steps, just so I can illustrate this. In real life, this would step 3. Step 3 is Joe Horvath. So Joe's the person that actually pushes out the check, logs into, in our case, Schwab, and pushes out the $20,000 check request. So there's a note here for Joe to reference the notes, and just basically says, hey, push out the ACH or the check, depending on which one the client requested, and which, again, that information is right in front of everyone's face as they're doing all of this stuff. Sample client, the account number, send check via regular mail, the net dollar amount, all that stuff is here. So the Joe Horvath in our example would have all that data in front of them, would click on the step, would log into the system where he's going to push out the check from, and then has a note here to call or email the client to inform the client the date the money should arrive. We do that because if we don't, they always call us. When clients request money, if they don't, we tell them, okay, we'll get that for you. If we don't send them an email letting them know we processed it, they call us usually 2-3 days afterwards just for a status update. So we just started taking a quick minute to send them out a quick email, letting them know that it's been completed and the date that it should arrive. So Joe does that, does his work, hits the complete button. The only outcome here is for the workflow to finish, for it to end. He might type a note, check sent out, 20K net, email the client. You don't have to type a note in here. You guys each firm has to kind of decide whether they feel like they need that or not. We don't typically need notes in here. We just know that it was completed because the person completed the workflow step, and if they didn't actually do it, then that's, it's real easy to figure out what happened within your team if somebody's not doing their job. Okay, so complete step. Now that workflow is completely, totally done. All right. So when I look back on my workflow task screen, I don't have anything in here anymore for sample client because that workflow process is completed. So the way to view this when there's multiple people involved is simplify it by thinking trigger event. Trigger event is client interaction in person, over the phone, with advisor, with team member, with whomever. They need something done that's a repeatable process. As soon as that happens, every single time that happens, whether it's a new account being opened, let your imagination fly with this when some of these things don't really apply. Some firms will say stuff like, well, hey, this doesn't make any sense because, with our clients, the person answering the phone, knows where they want the money to come from, or we don't advise the clients which accounts to withdraw funds from. We let them tell us. Well, that's fine, but this is just one example. So it doesn't matter whether it's a client needs money, a client needs to open up a new account, onboarding a new client in general, client wants to change their beneficiaries, client leaves the firm, onboarding new employees. Everything that we do that's a repeatable process, we have the process mapped out, and when the workflow starts, you have these multiple people getting workflow tasks flowing onto their workflow task screen when it's time for them to do the work. They click on the task, and up comes all the data right in front of their face that they need in order to complete their work. They log into whatever system is needed to do that work, and then they click complete, done, type a note if needed, and then it flows on to the next person to do their thing. It doesn't matter where the people are. It doesn't matter whether you're all in the same office or not. This data is flowing around nicely and concisely, and works very, 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 very well. So one side note here, let's pop over to the sample client so you can see the result. We obviously didn't send them money, right? We didn't actually send them money in real life. In real life, they would have a check en route, right? But after that workflow is completed, we now have all of these workflow steps all done. Okay, so this workflow process flowed right here. You'll see the target date and the due date, and the completion date was today, January 20th of 2020. Okay. So that being said, if you were to click right here, let's just assume that for some reason we need to go back and look at this. The client got the wrong amount, or the client wanted a check sent and they actually got an ACH, or whatever the case may be. We can go back here within the contact record and find all the info. Here's the info that was submitted. We would know who it was submitted by also. And we'd be able to go through each one of the steps and look at the notes that were typed in. We know who did it, and we see the notes that they typed in. So just wanted to show you this real quick so you have an idea of where all this information flows. So once it's done, there's a record of all of this stuff nicely organized in the event that you were to need to go back and look at it for some reason, which typically is only an issue when we have somebody on the team that's not doing accurate work or not doing what they're supposed to do in general. We need to go back and look at these things and see where the breakdown occurred. So quick side note that I wanted to mention there. One last side note is that we are in works with Redtail right now to try to get a system we've built called Revisor Workflow built directly into Redtail. And what it would do is eliminate the upfront part of the process, the upfront of actually assigning this workflow to the contact record. What it essentially is a form filling system like we see here. But instead of the data coming via email, we have built this system already, and again, just trying to working with Redtail and getting it blended into their platform. But we would be able to choose the contact record from a drop-down, and that data is coming from Redtail. So we want to be able to pick the contact record from the online fillable form, pick the account that's associated. You know, if we already know which account we want to take a withdrawal from in this example. And what that will allow us to do, if we can get this accomplished with Redtail, is it will allow us to submit these forms with even more accuracy, not requiring to type the name of the client, but picking the client from a drop-down, which that data would originate in Redtail CRM. Same thing for the account. If it's a situation where we're taking a withdrawal from a specific account or whatever the case may be, if there's a particular account involved in a repeatable process, we'll be able to choose that from the fillable form. And then in this system that we've built, that we again hope we can get, I'm pretty sure we'll be successful to get Redtail to adopt this, because it will be such a better scenario for all Redtail users. But when the form gets submitted, instead of having to go through the process like you saw me do of taking the data, copying it, and then pasting it into a workflow that we're assigning to the contact record, in this system that we're working on Redtail with, that doesn't have to be done. You pick the contact record within the form, and the workflow automatically gets assigned, and all of this data right here is automatically built into the workflow from the get-go. So it just reduces some of the copying, pasting, and some of the clicking that gets done. And last but not least, we have in this interface that we've built, that again we think Redtail will adopt, this data, each step for each team member in the firm comes to them via email with all of the needed information in the email, with any possible needed links to different software systems, all the data needed that we see here actually be in an email notification. This is not possible with Redtail right now. They do have email notifications, but there's no data. There's no good data in the email, so you can't actually, the team can't do their work from these workflows just by looking at the email that was sent out, which that would be ideal. We all have our email applications open all day, and that's the kind of the last part to this Revisor workflow system that we've built and are trying to get Redtail to implement into their platform. So it would be it would make everything easier. This is still a great system, but if when we get that accomplished, it will be even better and even easier and even faster. So that is that's a nice little overview of all the clicking that goes on and what happens when we assign a workflow. I've been using this is a simple process of getting a client a check. But this same thing works when there's more complexity, like a client opens a new account and we have to maybe coordinate specific rep codes. If you have splits in your office between different advisors, the fee that's being charged, the model portfolio that's going to be assigned to the account by the trader, any special positions that the client wants to purchase or own that are outside of the model. All of those little details, we've got very, let's say we have more detailed forms and workflows for more detailed and more complex processes. But I wanted to show a simple one here. But it doesn't matter how simple or complex the repeated process is. For all repeated processes within the firm, we have all of this information mapped out up front in the form to get the data needed for everyone to do their work. And then in the workflow itself, everything mapped out, the laundry list of items that need to be done to get that repeated process completed in an accurate and fast manner. Hopefully that helps, and hope you have a good night.